r/nosleep. Posted by u/NineTailedTanuki. I work at an arcade in a smallish town. There are some strange rules. This all happened before COVID-19 hit the world. I think it was in 2016, perhaps? I started working at the arcade some years before it all happened. I've had run-ins with the manager and all that. When I got hired, however, the manager made us all, as the new employees of the arcade, memorize some specific rules. These were unusual considering we were working at an arcade with things like Pac-Man and Frogger and Donkey Kong. You get the idea. Here are the rules of working at the arcade. Note that all of the events have happened at the same arcade. Rule number 1, if a new arcade game shows up either by the name of No Heart, No Soul or with EXE on the end of the title, do not play it, or let any patron play, at all costs. This was the one rule that I almost broke. When I had to memorize the rules, my first thought was, that's the most ridiculous set of rules I've ever seen. After what has been going on, how could I not think they were serious? Originally, rule number 1 just had with EXE on the end of the title, but the part about No Heart, No Soul was added after the deaths of a 10-year-old non-binary kid named Gabriel Myers and a 14-year-old young woman named Natalie Schmaltz happened as a result of playing the game. According to the account of the manager, a former employee named Thomas Ferrier allowed the game to be played. The kids played the game, it displayed a creepy message, and it added a creepy-ass character with the player's name, which was uncanny, since arcade games shouldn't even have the player's name already if it wasn't entered. And the avatars the kids had both talked to a character that looked like a mix of a female pirate and a biker punk. They then had to complete strange, difficult challenges. They couldn't complete them, resulting in the screen showing a message saying, "Game over. May the next victim play?" Both Gabriel and Natalie went pale and catatonic after that. As if the game had stolen their souls. Another former employee named Marky Harrison recounted that the game had shown up in another arcade under a different name. Now I'm going to tell you about when I almost broke the rule. No, this did not involve No Heart, No Soul. The arcade had just opened up for business, with Galaga, Miss Pac-Man, a vehicle arcade of Batman, a dance machine, you name it. I was cleaning up before work when I noticed a new arcade game just got plugged in. Its title was Donkey Kong.exe. I at first shrugged it off, thinking it was a bootleg Donkey Kong arcade. But the rules. I snapped out of it and reviewed the rules. I read and reread rule number 1. Thinking it was ridiculous, I went and let the arcade open, ready for the patrons to play. But the kids immediately noticed the new Donkey Kong, and they all gathered around it out of sheer interest. Almost as if they just became zealots for a deity of sorts. "Mr. Crab?" One of the kids asked me, "Can I play this?" They were pointing to Donkey Kong.exe. I was about to let her play it when the manager showed up out of nowhere. He came to me so fast I swear he came up out of the ground. Rule number 1, Danforth. But I can't disappoint these kids. As if I'd allow the monster to do its thing. Whatever you do, do not let the arcade under any circumstances be played by anyone, including yourself. It has not succeeded in finding another victim in 6 months and I will not let it happen again. Later, after the arcade closed, the game was unplugged, hauled off, and gone. No child played the game that day. Rule number 2, if no person comes out of the laser tag arena for 30 minutes after they enter, notify the manager immediately. After my run-in with the manager after nearly letting the girl play the game, how could I not want to follow the rules? This happened about a month after I saw Donkey Kong.exe. As a general rule, we have to observe the time of the next group of people playing laser tag goes in. We also have employees keeping watch on the laser tag in case of rule number 2. Normally, a period of laser tag lasts 20 minutes, so we're usually good on that. I had the shift that day. I watched the people go in, so I wrote down the time they went in. I know, we get bored on these kinds of things. But how can we not be bored when we just have to watch the entrance to the laser tag arena? The time was 2:37 p.m. when that group went in. I watched the entrance, glancing at my watch to make sure the laser tag game lasted 20 minutes and no longer. My co-worker Miles ghosted up to me, as she always has. "Danforth, how are you doing?" "Miles, don't you dare sneak up on me like that. I need to make sure that laser tag goes smoothly." "Oh? That's what you have to do today? Okay." She went back to her janitorial duties. By then, I glanced at my watch. 3:05. I dashed straight to the manager's office, after having noticed that nobody came out of the laser tag arena. After my run-in with rule number 1, how could I not? I burst the door open, and I said in a volume that was almost like shouting. Rule number 2. Time was 2:37 p.m. 12 people inside. With this, the manager got up from his chair so fast I thought he was about to run for his life. Shit. Shit 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 shit. Move aside. I knew this was going to happen again. I knew it. He grabbed a screwdriver and a wrench from his desk drawer and rushed straight to the laser tag arena. He opened the circuit breaker inside and did some things that would require the skills of a mechanic. After about 5 minutes, I saw the 12 people I saw enter the laser tag exit. No harm was done. Later that day, I had asked the manager about what happened that prompted him to make this rule. It turns out that some residents of the small town had gone missing after sometimes going into the laser tag. He showed me the missing posters, and even showed me some paperwork with notes by previous employees, about the times they went in, and how they found the 30-minute mark passed, and then noticing the batch of participants didn't come out. I had realized that what he did was a type of procedure that stopped the monster within the laser tag game. He discovered it in some sort of manual. I realized from his reaction to my notifying him of rule number 2, that the rules weren't there out of silliness. They were there to protect us all. Rule number 3, if a blonde woman in a red dress asks for a prize, under no circumstances should you give any of them to her. This happened to me for the first time about a whole month and 5 weeks into the job, no more and no less. I was given the shift of the prize counter that day. Note to you guys, we change jobs weekly, to make sure everyone does what we need to do to protect us all. I was working the prize counter. There were interesting things, like the toy balls and the Nerf guns you could find, but there were also plush animals. Luckily, the woman in the red dress can take no for an answer, making her one of the least dangerous things on the job at this arcade. I got about 7 tickets from this kid and they asked for the unicorn, and I gave them one. But in the line was a blonde woman in a red dress, right behind the kid who wanted the unicorn. She looked like her hair was really bleached white. Her dress was like a red-colored version of Morticia's black dress in that TV show. Her figure just looked awfully attractive. And creepy. She came up to me and asked, "May I have one of the plastic pirate swords?" Then she offered 5 tickets. Exactly the price of the fake weapon. I would have offered it to her, but the thing I found off about the tickets was that there were no numbers on them like they normally do. I said no. She just smiled and walked out of the arcade. I went to the manager to find out more about this rule. "Hey, can I talk to you for a second?" "Danforth, are you going to tell me you broke a rule?" "No, just to find out more about rule number 3. And with that, he gave me a stack of papers. When the arcade closed for the night, I read through them, the headlines jumping off the pages. Family murdered in home. Article from 1985. That article's words read something about one of the guys working at the local arcade and offering a prize to a woman in a red dress the day before the family was murdered. Engaged couple killed. Article from 1987. The wife was working at an arcade when she offered a prize to a woman in a red dress right before the night they were killed. I could see some handwriting, but it was hard to read. It read, "It's the same lady." Several more articles read about someone having offered a prize to a blonde woman in a red dress right before the deaths of them and their families. When I got to the last page, there was handwriting. I better make a rule for this to avoid any more deaths. Rule number 4, if there is a power outage in the after hours, hold still. If an arcade turns on by itself during said outage, go straight to it, and play the game until the power comes back. Make sure that when you play the game under that circumstance, to make no mistakes whatsoever. Normally, we are not supposed to play on the job, but if the circumstances for this rule happen, that is where we have an exception. As we switch jobs weekly, I sometimes have janitorial duties in the after hours. 2 weeks into the job, I have janitorial duties in the after hours, and the power goes out. Including the obligatory lights that stay on when all the lights are off. I stood completely still, thinking the power outage would be temporary. But an arcade came on. Turned on by itself, with a startup screen, and the number of credits needed to play already in. This was a standard game of the one with that hamster wheel children love so much. Where you have to roll the thing through the course without falling. I walked right up to it, gliding ghost-like right to the childish game. And when I played, it was as if the difficulty was set to expert mode. It was hard not to let the wheel fall off. I kept on playing, just to keep it from falling. The hamster wheel was at its first goal in 4 hours when the power came back on. Relieved, I went to the manager to tell him what happened. I saw you playing on the job. Rule number 4, rule number 9, or were you slacking off? Rule number 4, boss. Good. If that should happen again, then do that playing. No harm was done that night. And remember, Danforth, if rule number 4 should happen, making any mistake will do to you what that monster did to Gabriel and Natalie. As I remember from reading a retired employee's account, as we are required to do to avoid making mistakes, he recounted that the two kids appeared to go catatonic and their skin went paler after they each got a game over on the mysterious arcade rule number 1 was made for. Rule number 5, if all the arcade screens show the exact same image, notify the manager immediately. I have janitorial duties, but sometimes I work the prize counter and sometimes I also watch over the laser tag to make sure that it works properly and I don't have to do rule number 2. I had been working for 3 months then when all the arcade games suddenly blinked on in the after hours when the games were supposed to be turned off. They all show the exact same image. The image was that of a mix of a biker chick and a Disney princess of some form. I remember getting the last of the mess I had to clean up from the mini restaurant fast and running straight to the manager. Rule number 5. Okay, Danforth. Stay here. I'll take care of this. Then the manager rushed straight to the arcade game with the biggest screen, which was in a corner of the arcade. He stood straight-faced in front of the screen, and asked whatever the girl was on the screen. "Alright, what do you want this time?" The girl in the image on all the screens spoke to him, as if there were multiple girls speaking at once. "You know what I want. Cut the bullshit, lady. Tell me what it is you want. You made rules against it, remember? You know the games are hungry. Not after Gabriel and Natalie. Rules were meant to be broken. You know what I want, Lester." Like I'll ever believe that bullshit saying. It seemed as if the arcades were possessed by some strange monster. I felt as if we were dealing with some sort of demon. I remember watching this all helplessly like I had no way to deal with this. You think you could make a rule against the creature I am, when I need more? More what? You know what I want. No fucking way am I going to let another child die. Don't you remember? I want someone to play no heart, no soul. Hell no. Please. Why don't you let this cute little man play it, too? Not a chance. You will pay for this. Rule number 1 is there for a reason. There was silence for a few moments. Then she said, "You have given me what I want. All I really wanted was for you to remember the fear you had when I took those souls." After a moment, I heard the manager say, "You bitch." And then the arcade screens turned off. No other incident happened that day. I remember being vividly scared. I work at an arcade in a smallish town. There are some strange rules. Final. Rule number 6, should any patron hear a strange growling noise from any arcade, let them know you'll take care of it. Get a kit from underneath the manager's desk, and place it behind the arcade game it is coming from. This incident I'll tell you about happened nearly 5 months into the job. It happens about 5 or 6 times a month. Some kid was complaining about hearing a low growl from the Frogger arcade. There's kits for each arcade underneath the manager's desk, supposedly containing different foods for different monsters inside each arcade. They said that they heard the growling after they completed about 5 levels, and it distracted them so much that they ended up failing into a game over. Don't worry, kid. I'll take care of the problem. I rushed to the manager's office and asked if I could get something from beneath his desk. Rule number 6, Danforth? Yes, rule number 6. Which arcade? Frogger. Just a moment. I waited about half an hour outside the manager's office. I was bored, so I was about to leave when he came out with the necessary kit. Here. Remember to place it directly behind the arcade. I rushed over to the Frogger arcade and quickly put the kit behind the arcade. Almost immediately, I thought I saw tentacles just take the kit nearly immediately. I'll admit that this made me jump so much that one of the kids asked me if I was okay. I'm good. Thanks for your concern, though. If you say it all strained like that, Mr. Crab. Don't worry about me. I'm fine. Too late. I'm already picturing you as a sweat-scented candle. I wasn't surprised they said that because they were a teen. But I'm glad they made me smile after this. Rule number 7, if a strange woman's face suddenly shows up at the game where you throw balls at bottles, close it off until the face is gone. I had the drive to follow this rule after I saw what happened when a patron actually played it when the face showed up. The face looked a lot like that of Olivia Newton-John from when she was in Grease. My getting distracted was what caused the effect of what happens if you break this rule. I saw this adult male start playing the game, and he threw 2 balls without incident. The face showed up right after he threw the 3rd ball to topple the 3rd set of plastic bottles. The ball hit the face, and I could not believe what happened. The face showed a lot of anger. It stuck its tongue out, then opened wide. The man could hardly believe his eyes. He looked scared. Luckily, no one else was near the game. But then, the face just went right off the game and appeared to eat the man whole. I couldn't believe it. I noted the identity of the patron, closed off the game. We do so by adding the sign and some yellow tape to say it's being repaired, and ran to the manager immediately. I told him everything. Danforth, that face tends to show when we least expect it. It's very rare that the face should show up right as the game is being played. You were supposed to tell him to wait between throws in case the face showed up. I did. And he complied. Okay. And that face showed right as he threw the ball. Meaning that either the timing was bad, or that thing got smarter. I'll look into the incident. For now, close the game off for the rest of the day. And that I did. The face usually goes away after an hour of the game being closed, but it will take longer if it gets to someone. Could be why he wanted me to close off the game for the rest of the day. Rule number 8, if a brunette shows up wearing a black dress, wears a facial tattoo of a spiderweb, and walks as though she is floating, notify the manager immediately. Around a full 6 months into the job, I was making my rounds after hours, making sure to keep following the rules. The patrons were just leaving when I saw a brunette walk in. It took me a while to notice her face. Yes, she wore a black dress. She did walk like she was floating. She was super tall, as though she was over 8 feet tall. I was about to dismiss her as a patron coming for a prize when I noticed the unmistakable tattoo of a spiderweb around her right eye. After 6 months of noticing what happens if I break the rules, how could I not rush to the manager's office on instinct? Rule number 8, boss. Bring her to me, Danforth. It'll take a while, so wait outside when she's here. I had a feeling that he might have met her before. I looked all over for this girl. I'll admit she was beautiful, though the manager wants me to have her in his office. When I found her near the Pac-Man, she looked at me as if she was scared to death. I told her she'd be okay, and brought her to the manager's office. She immediately went inside, and I waited outside, just as he asked. It did take a while. Boredom was setting in, and the arcade screens turning on and off was getting annoying. The brunette walked out, seemingly calm, and she left the arcade. The manager's eyes appeared bloodshot. I asked him what was going on. I can't tell you, but were the arcade screens acting strange? They were turning on and off over and over. He paused for a moment. He looked and the arcade screens were still doing it. Danforth. Yes, boss? It's time. We have to break rule number 9 tomorrow. Rule number 9, do not play the nameless arcade game that randomly shows up in every corner of the arcade. This arcade has no name at all. Almost every day, the game randomly shows up on another corner. The arcade screens have different ways of acting if the brunette shows up, he told me. If they were showing weird images and cycling, it meant that there was nothing wrong. If they were showing the image of that girl while the brunette was there, he had to let her talk to the brunette. But if they were flashing like that, like what happened the day before, then we'd have to do what we did that day. This time, the nameless arcade showed up close to the entrance. It was almost like muscle memory for me to try and put the out of order sign on it, but the manager just waved me off. I need to do this, to keep this business going and to protect everyone. I was looking over his shoulder as to what the game was all about. His own name, which I never knew until then, which was Lester Harrison, showed up in the top left corner. Just like how the names of each kid had when they played No Heart, No Soul. I heard that in this nameless arcade game, the avatar was consistent, unlike that one that rule number 1 is all about. In it, the avatar looked like a rich male with a disfigured face. My boss got the man to the right of the arcade game, and the man talked to what appeared to be a zombified blend of a biker punk girl and the disguise that the 2 FBI characters in white chicks donned. They seemed to talk in an unintelligible language. A mix of Spanish and Irish, I think. Then the screen changed to black with white text that said, "Please choose a new manager." Then the manager said, "I already did. He's my best employee, I think he's fit for the job." Then the text changed to say, "Danforth Crab? Indeed, he is eligible." Then it changed into a game like one of the ones described in the one in rule number 1 that was added after the EXE ones, after the deaths of those 2 kids. In this case, it was the avatar in a burning version of the Green Hill Zone in Sonic the Hedgehog. Then the manager went catatonic. His skin paler. I decided to move his body off of it, and then the text said, "Now that you have taken the managerial duties in his place, please move the character to the goal. He would have wanted you to manage the arcade and protect everyone." Then, I did as it asked. I noticed that the name on the corner changed to mine. So, I played it to bring the avatar to the goal. I was scared still, even when I managed to get it playing. Scared because the manager died right then and there, before the game had me play. I was mentally scarred by the experiences of following and seeing the effects of breaking each rule, but I had to do it. It took a while, but when I finally got him to the goal, I was relieved. Then it switched to a text that said, "You have passed the test. I assure you that you will do what you can and save us all. Remember to read the manual on the desk so that you can fulfill your job. Goodbye." And then the arcade turned itself off. I went to Lester Harrison's office, now mine, and looked into the manual. I was scared because I had never taken such a job before, and witnessing his death, having been like what happened to Gabriel and Natalie, still scarred me. The manual was leather-bound, had the rules, the reasons why, and instructions on how employees must be trained. On the last page, it said, "Rule number 10, the establishment must always have a manager and owner." The theater in my hometown closed recently. Last night, I discovered why. When I heard from my mama Petra that the Pine Tree Theater closed in my hometown, I was devastated. That was the theater that displayed the town's greatest magicians. Amazing variety shows and stuff, alongside movies and concerts. The theater even had a telethon that was broadcast throughout the whole county. Mama Sophia told me that the theater's last show was why Pine Tree Theater closed down, out of business, like a company that lost all its riches. Nobody told me about the last show that came on there. Every time I asked, even to my childhood bestie Lilac, no one spoke of it. Instead, they just answered with the exact same thing. "Keep mum, and he won't hurt you." I asked all my old teachers, who were retired at the time, but they said the same thing. And I even went to my grandmama, and she said the same thing. Mama Petra told me that the theater's last show was some sort of magic show. No one knew the name of the magician who performed there. But someone revealed him for the two-bit hustler he was. So he took the children who exposed him into the backstage, and no one knows what happened after that. Those children have been missing since. Or so I was told. I needed time to think, so I went back to my hometown of Spruce Hills to rest and think on it. Why had my favorite theater of my childhood suddenly gone out of business? What happened to the children? What could possibly cause the whole town to believe keeping quiet about the whole thing would keep them alive? Yesterday, I decided I finally had enough of having only questions and decided to go to the theater myself, armed with a notebook, a 5B pencil, and some pepper spray. I knew I needed to take some notes, note some clues, and solve this mystery like the wannabe private eye I am, what with taking police academy classes in my university. I took note of the missing posters consistent with the Pine Tree Theater show. The newer Spruce Hills posters of missing children appeared to have similar locations of where they were last seen. As an aspiring detective, I knew I had to look for patterns. I wrote in my notebook. Pattern 1, missing since last show, all children, usually between 4 and 7. Pattern 2, locations, usually near the theater, but sometimes on the next block over. Pattern 3, looks of missing children, similar to the ones that went missing on the day of the last show. And then I wrote the date of the last show, July 9, 2022. I looked for evidence around the theater. The descriptions of each location asked for my forensic skills from back in my freshman year of college to go to work. But after some extensive searching late at night, I found zero evidence whatsoever. This criminal has got to be a mastermind, I thought. Leaving no trace, and yet the possibility of kidnapping had come to mind. Patterns and consistencies in how the children went missing leads to the possibility that the children may have been kidnapped. And so, I took this to one of the police officers to report, but he instead tried to snatch away my notes. "What the hell you doing, man? Keep mum, and he won't hurt you. I need to burn these." I pepper sprayed the officer and just ran off with my notes. I know what I did there was illegal, but because he said the same thing those people did, I knew right away I couldn't trust him. I know now I cannot trust the police of Spruce Hills because that guy who tried to take my notes and actually burn them was the chief. That afternoon, I wrote down the consistency in what was said by the people who saw the last show at Pine Tree Theater. They all said, "Keep mum, and he won't hurt you." Why keep quiet about a string of potential kidnappings? And why do the police want to cover this up? The police wanted to burn my notes, true. I would know a cover-up when I see the string of behaviors connected to cover-ups. The person behind this left no evidence, but what I'm certain of is that maybe the police are just stealing evidence, or destroying it. And when I wrote down that last bit, I realized the connection between my thought of them destroying evidence and the police chief trying to burn my notes. This evening, I decided to go inside the theater myself. I knew I'd be digging up old memories, but I had to get to the bottom of it. After checking to make sure no one was watching, I went on ahead in a sneaky fashion, just in case someone was watching that I hadn't noticed yet. I went inside the front door. For a closed-down building like this, the windows weren't all that boarded up. It was pretty easy to get in. I checked the lobby. The box office looked whitewashed. Surely whoever was behind this was keeping something secret? The rest of the place looked empty, and no door was left locked. As I went inside, I had such a creepy feeling that I couldn't comprehend. I went in deeper, but my gut was screaming at me. The theater appeared empty. I jumped when one of the lights suddenly went on. A spotlight, coming at me. What could I possibly be a star for? Spotlights just don't randomly come on, and right onto you. Especially in a closed-down building. The lights came on in front of the curtain. The curtain was that red from those years back. And then I heard a voice. It sounded ominous, spoke like the Wiz in that play, but was also amplified by a microphone. Step forward, Mars Farrell. How did this guy know my name? Did I have time to write another note like that? I needed to get to the stage to find out who was behind this and stop this string of crimes. That's close enough. Now, sit back and enjoy the show. I tried to keep running forward, but it didn't look like I was progressing. When I finally looked below me, I noticed that the carpet below me was moving like a treadmill. Hell if I know how that happens. And then, I thought I heard a child's voice behind the curtain. Let's hope Mars will enjoy their final night. I got off the carpet and instead tried to jump the seats and stop this. But every time, I would end up back in the same spot. As the curtains opened, I felt a twinge in my heart. As the spotlights suddenly flickered on, they revealed what appeared to be a haggard man in a top hat and a trench coat. I knew something was wrong from seeing what his face looked like. He looked like a zombie. The man then moved to the left and then waved his hand. What appeared to be zombified children came out from the wings. Missing children are dead. The culprit is a smart zombie or something. The children then, almost robotically, started drawing a circle in the center. Then they drew what appeared to be a star. Then, on the sides, they drew sigils. One a few steps stage left of the pentagram the children were drawing, and one a few steps stage right. Sigils and a pentagram. Possibility of the occult being behind the cover-up. As I'm taking police academy classes for being a private detective, I was often told that only the logical things mattered. Yet all this was so illogical I had to really think. And all this was giving me the creeps. My 3 years of experience with the police academy had no use in this. And then the magician brought out some cards. He appeared to be tossing them into the air. Now tell me, Mars, what card did you see? I did not want to oblige in this little magic trick this man was doing, but I got a hell of a scary vibe that if I didn't I'd die. 7 of spades. Then the magician pulled out another deck of cards, and did a trick with them to put them all inside his other hand. Then he did it again. But this time to place them inside the pentagram. The cards had flown and what formed in the center of the pentagram looked like a pillory. You may come now, Mars. And then one of the children said this. They shall be our next sacrifice. I was ready to run out of the theater in my terror, but each time I tried, the doors were locked, and the carpets just made me slip and fall. And, I was practically crying as the magician dragged me onto the stage. I tried to reach for my pepper spray. One of the children grabbed it, but I punched her just to get it back, and pepper sprayed the magician. Just what the hell do you think you're doing? I shouted, half scared and half angry. Don't worry, it won't hurt. Yeah, Mars, do this with us. I instead grabbed the magician by the collar and threw him into the audience area. I wrote in such terrified haste. Children are all dead and under control. Magician is the culprit. Can't back down now. He got up and appeared to be chanting some sort of spell. I couldn't understand him, but suddenly my body started to go numb. I looked under me, and noticed I was on one of the sigils. I managed to escape, still scared. The magician tried to chant again, but I pepper sprayed him again. This was big. This was such a big crime and cover-up that I was surprised. I took a couple of photos of him just as he tried to charge into me, and quickly put my phone away and just made a break for it. I would have called for backup if it weren't for the incident with the chief and my notes. Instead, I decided to take things on my own, despite still feeling fearful. I fled to the doors, and unlocked them. I went inside the box office by breaking the whitewashed glass and noticed that inside, there were 4 living children. All tied to the chairs and gagged. I hurriedly untied the ropes and got the gags off of them, but then they said, "Keep Mom, and he won't hurt you." I instead ran off in fear, knowing the kidnapped children were in on it, too. I went and did all sorts of stuff, just to let in the light. But it was nighttime. Perfect, I thought. The sun hurts them, so maybe they decided to do it at night. I went through all sorts of back doors. In one room, I found what looked like a ghost light. The light that keeps theaters protected from crime at night, and what makes the theaters look haunted. I managed to get it to work. So I went through back doors, and then when I brought it in, the zombified children and the magician immediately started attacking, as if it were an enemy. I made it brighter, but then they tried to attack it even more. But upon touching the light bulb, one of them disintegrated. So I ended up using the ghost light as a weapon and disintegrated all the zombified children. Then I pointed it to the magician. "Mars, you don't know what you're doing. Stop this, and we'll proceed with what we have to do." "No," I yelled, "you're going to tell me what you did with all those children, and you're going to do it right now, or so help me I will kill you. Understand?" He then tried to chant that foreign language again. I was suddenly bombarded with the thought about what they all were saying. My thoughts just said, "Keep Mom, and he won't hurt you." Over and over and over. The hell? And my body was going numb again. My pepper spray was handy again, pun intended, right in my left hand. I pepper sprayed him, and I suddenly wasn't going numb or getting that awful thought. I touched the ghost light onto him and he disintegrated. I wrote, "He makes them go numb, and then makes them think the saying consistent with who went to the show." But, unlike the children, he reanimated. I almost shouted in fear when he did, as I was in the middle of writing that note. Mars, Mars, Mars. They are such a naughty teen, they can't realize what their true purpose is. I threw him into what looked like a container with spikes. After it did its thing, I sealed it shut. After that, I managed to get the story out there. It never made it past Spruce Hill's local news, however. Other news outlets found it ridiculous. I'll be heading back to the college dorms in about 3 weeks. I've got police training to finish, after all. At least no one is saying that awful thing anymore, that awful, awful, keep Mom thing.